Welcome to White Door Tarot, where the reader is bubbly, but the readings can get dark. So today, I felt pulled to, since we are approaching the new year, I felt pulled to kind of do longer videos, if that's what comes out, for each of the zodiac signs. I think I want to take some time, to sit with each energy and try to see if we can put together some sort of insight that might help them in the next year. So, I'm going to start with Aries, and I'm going to try to record as many videos as I can tonight, but no guarantees that I'm going to get very far. All right. So, these videos, they're going to kind of trickle in. Nope. Hi. There we go. Okay. Overall energy. Two of Pentacles. Decisions, juggling. January. Let's see what's up for January. I was hoping for one card each month, but we'll go with it. All right, so January's got the Five of Swords and the Four of Swords. February's got the Mother of Cups. March, Mother of Pentacles. Nice. Okay. April. Oh, okay. April. Eight of Pentacles. Nice to see. Good. Okay. May. Father of Wands in reverse. Interesting. Interesting considering that you're a fire sign. June. I'm going to acknowledge that jam. The World in reverse. July. Son of Swords. Okay. August. Nine of Swords in reverse. September's looking like the Hanged Man in reverse. October. Got two for October as well. We have Seven of Pentacles in reverse and Strength. November and December. November is the Five of Cups in the reverse, and December is the Moon in reverse. Also got something about seasonal depression right there. So we shall see. Casper. Terrible timing, my dude. Okay, so let's look at, haven't pulled these decks in a while, but let's look at alchemy. Because while I was shuffling cards just now, I got an image of myself doing kind of like a quarterly pull with this deck. So it's almost like a first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter type of thing. Like a business. All right. Okay. Okay. First quarter, plumbum, lead. Second quarter, blood. Third quarter, fog. Fourth quarter, the drowned king. Interesting. Okay. So for January through, what's a quarter? January through March. No, January through April is going to be lead. Density, weight, Saturn. Lead is the first metal. Its properties are heavy, dense, and unwaveringly steady. It is often perceived as the metal that initiated the entire alchemical drive to turn what is base, lead, into what is noble, gold. It correlates to the planet Saturn and its love of rules and structure. On one hand, this card implies a fixed position or burden that may be weighing down the work. On the other hand, lead can arrive just in time to ground a situation to bring an alchemist back to the humble beginnings. Either way, the presence of lead is sobering. We cannot ignore it. The impatient alchemist may be discouraged to see it in the laboratory, as it reminds us of how far we have to go. Approach this card with reverence for the ongoing process. First thing that came to mind is you might want to look into whether or not you have any Saturn transits happening around that time for you. Because what really stuck out to me was the presence of lead is sobering, and that it's the energy of Saturn. Because Saturn returns, Saturn oppositions, like those kinds of transits can be huge events in our lives. In my case, I think when I went through, I can't remember if it was a Saturn opposition or a Saturn return, but when I when I looked it up, around the time that that was happening was around the time that I got sick, and I got a life-changing diagnosis. My problem up until that point was that I was hyper independent, and so I refused to ask for help from anyone. I always felt like I had to be, and it wasn't out of pride. It wasn't because I was too proud to ask for help. It was because I felt like I had to be strong. I felt like I had to be the one holding everything together. Um, and then I got sick and I got put in a position where I had no choice but to rely on other people. And so basically, what I'm saying is January through March, in the tarot that I pulled, it's looking a lot like facing yourself, because the Five of Swords is in the reverse and the Four of Swords is in the upright. And the Four of Swords is about being still and healing, pausing, reflecting. Five of Swords is self-destruction. That being in the reverse tells me that in January you're transitioning from a more like self-destructive energy into a more healing energy, like actually stopping to process. When we go into February and March, it looks like you're, kind of developing more of your heart space and building yourself a better foundation. Pentacles is typically about money. I mean, you could be running into, better opportunities for money or something like that. But what this really feels like is it's almost like you're pulling yourself out of this dark place and you're moving into healing and you're moving into rebuilding from, and I'd imagine a tower moment that happened sometime this year. It's like you're finally going into a better, more steady, um what's the word that I just heard, intentional energy. Because I think a lot of people, they tend to kind of live on knee jerk reactions. When stuff happens, we kind of just turn to our vices, or we try to escape our feelings, or we do whatever we can in the moment to make ourselves feel better. But it's not really until we actually pause and reflect on the situation that we can actually become better. And I think that with this lead card popping up for the first quarter in January, February, March, looking like a period of healing and kind of reevaluating your inner world, it tracks. So it looks like up until your birthday season, you're going to be slowly but surely getting your feet back on the ground. I hesitate to say back on the ground because it almost feels like you're getting to a better place than where you've been. Okay, so going into blood, March or April through June, July. English is hard. The pulse, physicality, the body. Have no fear of the blood card. It indicates a remembrance of the vital mammalian nature of our existence. Drop by drop, this sacred elixir reminds us that we are alive, not merely thinking beings, but being beings. When blood is the prima materia in the laboratory, the alchemist uses the physical body as the starting point, building a relationship to the container that houses the spirit. Through the limbs, the organs, the cells, we witness the miracle of life one heartbeat at a time. Eventually, the alchemist naturally partakes in practices that support and nourish blood's life giving nature. We learn to honor and protect it. In alchemy, red is the color of vitality and radiance. With this card, you've dropped into the vital realm. Sing the body's praises. And again, I find this very interesting because the way that this coincides with the tarot. So we've got, let me rearrange here so that it's a little easier to. Huh. Hold on. Hold on. I'm playing Tetris, table Tetris. That sounds okay. So anyway, the way this is popping up, April, May, June. The Eight of Pentacles to me is the card of building yourself up, like doing all that you can and then sitting in wait, because this card is depicted with a spider. And how do spiders hunt? They don't chase down their prey. They build the best web that they possibly can, and they sit and they wait. Father of Wands in reverse and the World in reverse, though, for May and June, is telling me that in this period of time, it's almost like you're letting go of a certain way that you've identified yourself. Because the Father of Wands is the card of a fire sign, right? That's Aries embodied. You know, passionate, sometimes impulsive, fiery, but like the Father of Wands in the reverse and the Eight of Pentacles in the upright is telling me that in April, May, there's a process of rebuilding yourself. You know, I mean, you kind of go through the internal process January through to March, basically. But beyond that, it's almost like as a result of your internal world growing, and it doesn't feel, this January, February, March, it doesn't feel like expansion per se. It doesn't feel like a bulking up. It feels more like, anyway, I didn't realize that my cat was playing with my mic and probably making all sorts of noise. But anyway, the January, February, March, it that transformation doesn't feel like growing. It doesn't feel like expanding. It doesn't feel like bulking up. It feels more like depth. It feels like the image that I keep getting is like water. So, you kick up a bunch of mud and sand and stuff at the bottom of a lake and it'll get murky. But then as the water sits still and the dust settles, the mud settles to the bottom of the lake, the water gets clearer and clearer and clearer. And you can see more depth from the outside looking in. That's what that feels like. Now, for March or April, May, June, it feels like you're settling into that energy. And with blood, it feels like embodiment. It feels like you're embodying this new, more serene almost energy. And this happens because you stop self destructing, because you stop running on your impulses and you pause. And that's all it takes is a pause. Because we we don't complete our cycles. We tend not to. We tend to go through the cycle and not pause for long enough to feel it. We start to distract, we start to run, we start to turn to other people. I was listening to, oh, I had YouTube just running in the background while I was cooking. Um, and it started playing this video, this like all signs read from some random tarot reader. I don't know who she is. And I was listening, and I can't even remember which zodiac sign this was for, but she was talking about how, oh, this person is so miserable without you. That's why they're going to come back, because they're sitting in misery and they're realizing that their life is just meaningless without you. And then she was also saying for another zodiac sign, like, oh, this person's worried that you're probably married to someone else, or you've found someone else and you've moved on or whatever. And it got so hard to listen to that I had to scrub dough off of my hands just to change the video, because I couldn't stand it, because that misses the point. It misses the point of the process. The people that turn to videos like that are probably in that space where they want someone that hurt them to come back so that they can hurt them back, honestly. They don't want them back because they want to make it work. They don't want them back because they genuinely think that it's going to work, although they might think that they think it's going to work. It's because what they want is their dignity back. Because when someone hurts you and then they leave you high and dry, there's no real closure there. And so these people are in that mindset of, oh, I want them back. But really what they're wanting is for that person to return so that they can end things on their terms. It's so that they can change the ending of the story and they can end it in a more dignified way for themselves. And so those people flock to videos like that, and these tarot readers feed that fantasy. But the part that they're missing is that if that's really what you want, you're placing your dignity, your worth, your peace of mind in the hands of someone else. You are giving them that power. What you need to be doing is pausing and asking yourself, what is my self-worth based on? What is my dignity built on? And you go from there. But it's hard to sit through the feeling of loss, of shame, of feeling like you didn't matter to someone that abandoned you. It's hard to sit through those feelings. And the lower hanging fruit is they should come back so that I can rip them a new one. And honestly, if you genuinely want them back, then why would you want to hear that they're miserable without you? Because that only means that they're coming back because they're desperate. They're coming back not out of want, not out of love. They're coming back out of desperation. They're coming back because the pot got too hot and they want an out. They're not going to you because they want you. They're going to you because where they're at sucks. And why would you want to be wanted that way? If the person was honest and straightforward, they would say, oh, I'm back. I want you back because my life sucks. Wouldn't you want someone that's a little more whole than that? Wouldn't you want someone that's a little more, that has more capacity than that? You know, you don't want to be wanted out of desperation. You're not some microwave mac and cheese. You're worth, you're worth the effort of cooking, you know? So basically what I'm getting at here, the reason I bring all this up is because as you embody yourself more, your new self more, this next year it's like you're transforming. You're transforming into someone that you've never been before. And all of this growth, all of this progress will start the moment you pause, the moment you stop grasping for instant gratification, for distraction, the moment you stop running from your feelings, the moment you stop running from yourself, and you actually go through the process of facing yourself, that's how you grow. The world card in reversed in June is snagging energetically. It feels almost like there's still a little bit of resistance there on your part, because growing means outgrowing too. It means that there will be things that no longer resonate with you in your life. It means a lot of goodbyes because it clears space for better to come. And that might be the tough part, is that as you allow yourself to grow, your standards rise. And you'd think to associate growth with expansion, but really, as you grow, your choices only get less and less. And by that, I mean, for example, nowadays I can barely listen to a video like that tarot readers video without cringing so hard that I'm so desperate to change the video that I literally scrub dough off of my hands just so that I can change the video. I can't watch a chick flick without cringing because every time every time I start psychoanalyzing the characters and going, that's not healthy. That's not healthy either. Oh God, that's not healthy either. And surprisingly, and I have no idea why, but surprisingly, I do have options, honestly. I mean, if we're being frank, I get messages from random people all the time. I get hit on all the time. No idea why. Trust me, I don't know either. But none of them appeal to me because I've outgrown the realm that they're existing in. You know, these are people who are lust forward, as in they operate from a place of physical attraction or instant gratification, wanting to rub their body on another person's body. And that's not what I'm looking for, or they are like the person that was mentioned in that tarot video where they're only seeking me out because they're lonely and they just want someone. Anyone will do. And I'm not an anyone. And I know that because I've grown to learn that. I'm not an anyone. I deserve to be wanted specifically. I don't not want love, but I don't seek it out, if that makes sense. Like, I don't live my life going, damn, I really want a partner. It's not how I operate. I'm doing other stuff. My plate is pretty full, actually. But if I meet someone that I really, really like, then I'll make room. And so you can see how that severely narrows down my actual options. Yeah, it looks like I have a lot of options because I have a bunch of random people hitting me up all the time, but I don't really, because all of them suck. They're not to my standard. And so that seems to be what you're going to be facing in June. You're going to find that the more that you grow, the less you're okay with. All right, getting into fog. Oh, here it is. Disorientation, a funk, a lull. When fog is present, nothing is clear, not even the problem. It's hard to orient oneself or to know where you're headed. A distinctly damp mood blankets the laboratory. Fog can be surprisingly pleasant as a counter to drama, and therefore it can lull us to sleep for long periods of time. With its cooling nature, fog is a natural balm for pain and trauma. Yet this state cannot sustain us, for we long to see the horizon and our surroundings. There are two solutions. The first is heat. Think sweating, desire, confrontation, passion, creativity. If that's too edgy, the second and inevitable solution is time. As they say, the morning fog burns off by noon. The sun will be seen again. How much time you spend in the fog is yet to be determined. So, yeah, this also tracks. So it looks like where were we? April, May, June, July. In July, The Son of Swords, you're getting some kind of quick communication, or you're going to reach out to someone. Some sort of communication is happening. It's going to be somewhat impulsive, swift, fast. But getting into August, September, the Nine of Swords in reverse, the Hanged Man in reverse, this feels like resistance. I also just heard someone going, no, 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 too far, too far, too far. And what that tells me is, you know how like we start hitting this snag in June? As you grow and you introspect, there's a certain point that you hit where you've gone too far. Um, and now you're just hurting your own feelings. It happens. It totally happens. T- uh, how do I word this? It's almost like you as you start to feel the consequences of growth, yeah, and the benefits at the same time, as you start to sober up through healing, because it's like we can't really see the world very clearly until we do, but once we do, we see the world all too clearly. And once you start to see that, do you remember, if you've ever watched The Green Mile, that speech that that big guy made about shards of glass? Like, he's like, I can feel all the world's pain, and it's like shards of glass, and it hurts. That's what happens when you allow yourself to feel, and you open those floodgates, and you start to grow, and you start to process, and you turn inward, and you start to look around with your new set of eyes. It's painful. That's the part nobody talks about. Is it is painful. It's isolating, it's scary, and it's painful. August, September, Nine of Swords in reverse, the Hangman in reverse. But here's something, because the Hangman's about seeing things from a different perspective. You cannot unsee what you've already seen. You cannot unlearn what you've learned, and you cannot hold on to what you've been programmed with when you know that it no longer resonates. It's a lot of letting go and gaining, letting go and gaining, letting go and gaining. But you can't undo what you've done when it comes to growth. Another example is when I almost died from my illness, I realized the absurdity of the world, because I've experienced being the person dying, having their final thoughts, looking back at their life and processing it rapidly. And I had no idea anymore why I cared so much about the things that I cared about, and why I didn't care more about the things that really mattered. And it's like, now that I've seen that, I can't even begin to pretend that I didn't. I can't pretend to care when I don't. My standards of existence, my metrics are so different now, and I can't unlearn it. I couldn't fit myself back in that box if I wanted to. And that seems to be this experience here. And that's going to take a minute to process, because what you're going through, fog, that's almost like dissociation, it feels like. Kind of taking a step back, because being in your body is getting overwhelming. The pot is getting hot. Yeah, you're taking a moment to process that, because all of a sudden you feel like you don't belong. And that is a vast and lonely feeling, but it is also a consequence of growth. All right. Finally, for October, November, December, we have the Drowned King. Ego collapse, losing face, humility. In alchemy, the archetype of the king is often used as a symbol for the ego, the aspect of the self that is attached to its title, name, and identity. What was I just talking about? It is said that the drowned king is a required phase in the process of transformation. Only through dissolving who they thought they were is the king able to become who they are destined to be, a kind and benevolent leader. How does the drowning occur? Not voluntarily, that's for certain. Through circumstances beyond their control, the king is brought to their bottom, to their knees. When this card appears, expect a huge blow to the ego, impactful enough that it causes one to turn their life around, prioritizing grace over greed benevolence over brutality, sovereignty over selfishness. The drowned king eventually resurfaces as a fully changed, benevolent being. Wow. This next year is going to be very, very transformative for you. I can see why, though, because you guys went through a lot of transits and stuff this year. Like the what Chiron is in Irish, Chiron is in Aries, and that's about facing our identity wounds. A lot of transits this year. I could see why next year will be the kind of boots to the ground moment for you guys. It's like you've felt a lot of feelings. Maybe you still tried to see if your old coping mechanisms would work. Maybe you tried to distract or run. But here's the thing, you can't outrun feelings. Feelings don't stay stationary, they follow you and they grow as they follow you. And the moment you stop for air, it'll get you. October, strength and the Seven of Pentacles in reverse. This feels like, because the Seven of Pentacles is about considering, should I invest in this or not? I feel like strength, I initially had like a completely different take on this, but it just hit me that strength, that's your compass. You see, Taurus is ruled by Venus. So me personally, my compass is love. My compass is joy and what feels good. If it feels good to me, then I know I'm going in the right direction. And I don't mean feel good in a superficial way. Like, not that it's easy, not when it feels good. When it feels like I'm doing the right thing, I know I'm doing the right thing. I tap into my feelings. Aries, you are ruled by Mars. You are fire. You are power. You are strength, and you are raw. But it looks like up until this point, the piece that was missing was that your fire has to come from the heart, not the head, not the ego, from the heart. So it's like in October, you're faced with choices and you're navigating through them with what makes you feel empowered, what makes you feel like you can take on the world. And in that process, it feels like there's some ego death involved here. And I hate using that term because I don't think that ego is a bad thing or that it needs to go away or disappear completely or be destroyed or die. But it needs to be tamed. It needs to be studied and understood and put under your control. Because too many people let the ego lead. And that's not a good idea. The ego's dumb, to be honest with you. The ego's the one that goes, "What? What'd you just say to me?" Picking a fight when there doesn't need to be one. That's ego. Getting your feelings hurt and having this knee jerk reaction of, "Oh, I'm going to hurt him back." That's ego. You don't let that guy make his own decisions. So basically, learning to tame your ego. I'm engrossed in watching my Goliath bird eater tarantula spin some new webs. But anyway, learning to tame your ego entails hearing him out, going, okay, I get that we're pissed. There's a good reason that we're pissed. This person made us feel disrespected. Now let's examine whether or not we were actually disrespected or if we were just triggered. And you go from there. But in this process of what makes me feel strong, tapping into what makes me feel empowered, what fuels my fire, but in a heart-centered way, in a passionate way, in a loving way, in a way that makes me feel like I can do anything. Not just that I can probably take on, like small dog syndrome, where you're like, yeah, I can take that guy. Not in that way. More in the, you know, I think that I can become the thing that I want to be. I think I can go back to school. I think I can go for that job. I think I can ask that person out. What makes you feel empowered? And also redefining what power is to you. November, Five of Cups in the reverse. December, the moon in the reverse. I just saw, you know how when it's really cloudy and you're looking at the ground, and you can see the shadows of the clouds, and you see these flickers of light, and it almost looks like it's getting darker and lighter and darker and lighter and darker and lighter. That's what this feels like. It's a very, very delicate balance that you're trying to strike here between November and December, because it's like seasonal depression is kicking in. I got that earlier. And you're trying not to succumb to it. And so you're doing everything you can to keep your spirits up. But you've learned by then that some feelings need to be heard, not distracted from. So it's like your seasonal depression is almost pushing for more growth, because it's bringing in thoughts and feelings that you usually don't let yourself acknowledge. Almost like scrying, but on an emotional level. Because, you look into a black obsidian mirror, and that's how you scry, right? You're staring into a void, a darkness, and you see things. You see things that you wouldn't in the light. That's what that feels like. But because you're trying not to succumb to it, it's like you keep pulling yourself back out of that mode and then going back in to examine and then coming back up for air. And that's what that feels like. And that's really interesting energy coming from an Aries, because I hate to say it, but Aries people, they live on instinct. They live on heat, right? So seeing that level of being so emotionally adept that you are able to navigate that condition of being where you are actively trying to keep the pit, the void, the darkness at bay, while also not letting yourself jump into distraction or superficiality, is really, really interesting. Okay, now addressing the overarching energy, the Two of Pentacles, the card of juggling, the card of choices. This kind of ties it all up in a neat little bow, because this process of growth and transformation is a string of choices, a string of decisions. For example, in my lived experience, I am a recovering fearful avoidant. Terrible childhood. Attachment feels too close, scary. I feel smothered. But too far distance feels dangerous. I feel abandoned. Proximity and distance both feel uncomfortable for me. And I am constantly balancing that out when dealing with other people, trying to be as communicative as I can with where I'm at, because I know this about myself. And knowing that I am a fearful avoidant isn't going to make the feelings go away. It's not going to make the triggers go away. But I had to learn to sit through the discomfort and continue to work with the other person when my impulses say chase or run. And so every action through these connections that I have in my life is an active decision to behave from a healed place. And so healing doesn't always feel good. Sometimes healing is just knowing where your wounds are and learning how to function with them anyway. Healing a nervous system, that deep healing where you actually do feel good, you feel lighter. That takes practice. You can acknowledge and be as self aware as you can be, and you can know what you know about yourself all you want. But it's not until you put it into practice that it actually starts to stick. So I'm learning to feel more comfortable at appropriate distances and proximities to people, because I'm getting a lot of practice. I have good people in my life that I want to maintain healthy relationships with. And so I choose. I make decisions independent of my fear, independent of my pain, independent of my discomfort. And that's what this Two of Pentacles is as you're going through this process, you're learning to behave differently. It might not feel good every step of the way. I mean, we got the Nine of Swords here in, can't even remember what month that was. August? Anyway, it won't feel good every step of the way. It'll feel like death. It'll feel lonely. It'll feel isolating. It'll feel scary. It'll be like, can I just crawl back in the box? Because ignorance is indeed bliss. It's easier to just stay toxic and be toxic and just not even acknowledge it than it is to be so self aware. It's a rough process, but going through it means making all these micro decisions and taking one baby step at a time towards progress. This is putting it into practice by making different choices from a more self aware place, from a kinder place. I'm hearing something about self preservation, and that seems to be a key for somebody here. A lot of your life has been survival, and so a lot of your focus has been on self preservation. But when you're so concerned with keeping yourself alive, you don't have the space for other people's feelings. You don't have the space for connection because you're more worried about yourself than you can be of anyone else. And that doesn't make you evil. That doesn't make you a bad person. It just means that you need to let your nervous system rest. You need to feel what you need to feel, go through it, sit with it, talk to your inner child, and then you'll become someone capable of holding love. So, that's what I got for Aries. Holy crud, that is almost an hour-long reading. I guess I wasn't kidding when I said that I wanted to really take the time to sit with each energy. So yeah, all I'm putting out for today is Aries because the rest of tonight is going to be self-care. I just made myself some Indian food and I'm about to chow down, take a shower, and call it a night. All right. Well, I will put out these videos as I am able to. And see you in the next one. Bye.